everybody, and welcome to another installment of Vintage Mego by the Mego Museum. This week we explore the 23rd century with a look at Mego's merchandising attempts for Star Trek the Motion Picture, namely a series of model kits/toys they released of the various ships from the film. Let's set the frame. After the success of Star Wars, Paramount Pictures decided that instead of doing a Star Trek reboot series like they were planning, they would make a full-blown motion picture. Mego, who was still selling Star Trek merchandise at the time, largely assumed they had the license. But Paramount was actually considering the Star Trek the Motion Picture a separate license, and everyone would have to reapply. This is something that's commonly done now with licensing, but back then it was kind of revolutionary, and it certainly didn't sit well with the folks at Mego. And if you'll notice, in the 1978 Sears catalog, 3 8-inch Star Trek figures mysteriously appear. These are called the Blank Back series, and they're kind of made of cheaper materials. I honestly believe this was Mego keeping their head in the game with Star Trek and making sure there was some Star Trek product out there. Eventually, everything was settled, and Mego was granted the license to produce a lot of the same things that were such a success for them for Star Trek in the middle 70s, like dolls and action figures, working communicators, play sets, and curiously, model kits of the ships, which was not something that Mego really did very often. There was the King Kong model kits, but it wasn't something that was their strength, even though they did it very well. The difference between these ships and the AMT Ertl models is the skill set and the playability factor. Each of these Mego ones are very easy to put together and put the labels on. It's a fun fact, the labels from the AMT Ertl model kits had me in tears many times in the late 1970s. So even though these were actually well designed, a kid could paint them or play with them in the sandbox. It was up to them. There were 3 ships in the series. The Uss Enterprise is a fairly accurate depiction of the ship that appears in the motion picture. Interestingly enough, Mego added a play feature in that the saucer detaches from the body and has its own landing gear. This predates Star Trek The Next Generation doing this by about 8 years. One of the more memorable sequences in the film is the opening featuring 3 Klingon battle cruisers being eaten alive by V'ger. Mego even provided a chart on the back that showed you where the bridge was, the photon torpedo tube, photon energy unit. In the pre-internet days, this kind of information was so valuable. Described as an enemy spaceship on the box, it's one of the few times where there's actually a spelling mistake on a Mego box, as enemy is spelt with 2 N's. Rounding out the set is Mr. Spock's Vulcan Shuttle and Sled, though not to scale with the other 2 vehicles, obviously. The Vulcan Shuttle includes 2 play features, in that the shuttle detaches from the sled, and the sled has wheels. A curious note is in the secondary market, the Vulcan Shuttle is the hardest one to find. The ships themselves were not sold in a case pack where they were mixed. They were sold in master packs of 12, and that's all you got. So the only thing I can assume here is the Vulcan Shuttle and Sled was the least ordered item.
Star Trek!
This is the exploration pod of the USS Enterprise, part of the Star Trek collection, each sold separately.
Star Trek!
This is the Klingon Cruiser and the Vulcan Shuttle. Vulcan Shuttle has a breakaway cockpit. You can pretend they battled through space as you send the Enterprise to the rescue.
Star Trek!
USS Enterprise, Klingon Cruiser, and Vulcan Shuttle from the Star Trek collection, each sold separately by Mego.
The Star Trek ships were marketed internationally in Canada by Grand Toys, the UK and Germany by companies like Airfix, and believe it or not, these did make it to the United States in very small quantities. The overseas distributors didn't have the luxury to buy small quantities. They paid well in advance with a letter of credit, so that's why they're more commonly found in foreign packaging. The Vulcan Shuttle I have here is a very rare example of an American box. On the secondary market, finding boxed versions of these shuttles often proves difficult, and they do fetch a high price tag. This is mainly due to having an appeal to both Mego collectors and fans of Star Trek, so there's a lot of demand out there for these items. On a personal note, I'm very fond of these ships because they remind me of my early days as a teen collector about 30 years ago, yikes, where I found a huge overstock of these at the Sears Closeout Center in Brampton, and I was able to buy them for about $3-4 and sell them to U.S. dealers for $15, thus furthering my toy collecting career. I wish I had kept at least 2, but I thought the supply would never end, and we learn those lessons hard, don't we? So tell me, Mego collectors, do you collect Star Trek the Motion Picture? Do you have fond memories of these ships? Did you want them in your collection? I'd love to hear your feedback. There's several ways you can get a hold of me, either in the comments here on YouTube. You can hit us up at our official Facebook group, Mego Mania, where over 6,000 Mego heads would love to chat with you. Or you can visit our forums at MegoMuseum.com, the oldest Mego forum in the galaxy, where we discuss everything from new, customs, and, of course, vintage Mego. I hope to see you there. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for telling your friends. Take care.
Star Trek!